Heartland Newsfeed Radio Network. This is Jake Leonard with your weekend news break for Saturday, April 28th. Governor Bruce Rauner submitted a request to the United States Small Business Administration for assistance to help people based in Iroquois and Vermilion counties recover from severe storms and flooding back in February. If a SBA administration would aid people and businesses based in the three counties as well as surrounding counties to apply for low-interest term loans. Many people are still working to fully recover from these devastating floods, said Governor Rauner. If approved, these low-interest loans can be processed for many people in business. To be eligible for a declaration by the SBA, 25 homes and or business in a must sustain major uninsured 40% or more. And that criteria, 74 homes and 9 businesses in Iroquois, 28 homes and 3 businesses in Kankakee County, and 21 homes and 7 businesses in Vermilion County met that criteria. On April 11th, the state of Illinois requested federal assistance to help recover from the floods, but that request was denied late. Heartland Newsfeed is looking for additional staff writers and an advertising sales team to help sales for the website. For more information, you can contact admin at heartlandnewsfeed.com. This has been our segment of the Heartland Newsfeed Weekend News Break. You can find more at heartlandnewsfeed.com. Continuing coverage now.
Here are your top stories.
We're setting up meetings now.
Trump says he has a responsibility to try for peace with North Korea.
For this candidate, it's all in how you don't say it.
Are you Republican?
AI, the next possible battlefront for the U.S. and China.
This is Reuters Now.
Peace is breaking out on the Korean Peninsula, and President Trump plans to be a part of it.
I think the responsibility has fallen on the shoulders of the President of the United States, and it's something that I hope I'm able to do for the world.
I'm Andy Sullivan in Washington, where Trump has his eye on history as he prepares for a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Trump is eager to show that all his tough talk on Twitter can yield results and tame a rogue nuclear-armed nation. Success on this front would be a game changer and a rebuke to all those who have painted Trump as a warmonger. But even now, he's careful to say that it all could come to nothing.
And if I can't do it, it'll be a very tough time for a lot of countries.
Hours after the leaders of North and South Korea held a historic summit meeting on Friday, Trump said he would keep up the pressure on Pyongyang until it abandons its nuclear weapons program.
We're not going to be played.
But Trump has been dialing back the rhetoric as relations have thawed, no longer describing the North Korean leader as Little Rocket Man, raising eyebrows when he described him as honorable on Tuesday.
Things have changed very radically from a few months ago.
But even as Trump works to craft one nuclear deal, he might be unraveling another, appearing unmoved by the pleas of visiting German Chancellor Angela Merkel to remain part of the Iran nuclear deal, issuing a veiled threat to that country.
They're not going to be doing nuclear weapons. You can bank on it.
Despite their deep differences, Trump earning a rare compliment from Merkel on North Korea.
It has become very clear that the strength of the American president, where he really saw to it that the sanctions against North Korea are abided by, are respected, has opened new possibilities, opened new ways.
Trump has taken a lot of heat for his confrontational approach to world affairs, but here's one scenario where he can plausibly say that it's helped to bring an adversary to the bargaining table.
How are you? Hi, Paul Davis.
Paul Davis is running for Congress in Kansas. His campaign flyers don't mention his party, and he's unlikely to say unless you ask him.
Yeah.
What he'll go out of his way to tell you is that he likes barbecue, dogs,
Don't look at me with those eyes,
and compromise.
We've got to have people who are willing to work with the other side.
Paul Davis is a Democrat, one of many running in congressional districts long held by Republicans in this year's midterm elections. And if he wants to win his district, Davis needs the rural white voters who helped elect President Trump, who won Kansas by almost 20 points in 2016. On a recent Friday, Davis met a few Trump voters at a barbecue competition in Osage City.
I'm sure that the vast majority of people in that room were Republicans. But I had another gentleman that said to me, well, I'm a Republican, but I vote for the person. Those are obviously the kind of people I want to talk to.
While Davis supports long-held Democratic values like abortion rights, he sticks to talking points about jobs and the economy. But it's clear Davis has his work cut out for him if a recent encounter with a Trump voter is any indication.
Are you Republican?
I'm a Democrat. Yeah.
Sorry. Have a good day, sir.
All right.
A U.S. congressional committee on Friday released its findings in an investigation into Moscow's alleged interference in the 2016 U.S. election. The House Permanent Select Intelligence Committee found Russia engaged in an information war against the U.S. But the Republican-dominated panel largely exonerated Donald Trump's presidential campaign of allegations of collusion with the Kremlin. Trump seized on this.
Yeah, we were honored. It was a great report. No collusion, which I knew anyway. No coordination, no nothing.
The House committee has been the scene of a bruising political battle over the Russia probe. The heavily redacted 243-page document released Friday hews closely to the Republican narrative. At one point, it states that while Trump advisors may have sought help from Russian agents, nothing ultimately came from these efforts.
WikiLeaks! I love WikiLeaks!
It called Trump's praise for WikiLeaks highly objectionable and inconsistent with U.S. national security interests. It also faulted the Obama administration for failing to properly respond to Russian efforts to subvert the election. Democrats released their own findings in a separate minority report. It accuses Republicans of rushing to end the probe prematurely and calls the report misleading and unsupported by the facts. Russia denies allegations it interfered in the election.
"72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo, the man accused of committing a string of rapes and killings across California, appeared in court for the first time on Friday."
Is Joseph James D'Angelo your true and correct legal name? I'm sorry? Yes.
The ex-cop was handcuffed to a wheelchair and has so far been charged with 8 counts of murder attributed to the Golden State Killer. D'Angelo was arrested this week and is suspected in a dozen slayings, as well as 45 rapes and more than 120 burglaries, a crime spree that sprawled from Sacramento all the way to Southern California in the 1970s and 80s. Investigators finally cracked the case by combing through genealogy websites. Detectives compared DNA found at the crime scenes to genetic information listed on the websites, which led them to family trees of close matches. They made a positive ID, the first break in a case that has long haunted victims' families and law enforcement, and is considered one of the most prolific in California's history.
Of a number of people.
Republican Congressman Patrick Meehan resigned on Friday, months after it was revealed that he settled a former staffer's sexual harassment claim with taxpayer money. The Pennsylvania lawmaker also announced he would repay the U.S. Treasury the $39,000 payment. The money was first reported by the New York Times amid a wave of harassment and abuse claims against high-profile men in various industries. The married father of 3 has said he considered the former aide his soulmate and denied his behavior escalated to harassment. Though there's an official taxpayer-funded house fund for harassment and discrimination settlements, Meehan used official congressional office funds to pay the aide what he called a severance payment. The state's governor now has 10 days to call a special election.
North Korea's state news agency has hailed the Inter-Korean summit as a turning point for the peninsula. In a rare move, the coverage mentioned the denuclearization discussion, but didn't go into specifics. Instead, it highlighted the broad themes of peace, prosperity, and Korean unity. During Friday's historic meeting, the leaders of the two Koreas embraced at the border, after pledging there will be no more war on the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-un and South Korea's Moon Jae-in say hostilities will cease and an official end to the Korean War will be declared this year. They say they'll also work to Koreas of nuclear weapons. Reuters' Malcolm Foster is in Seoul.
And these are all good things for the inter-Korean relationship. They only made a general commitment to denuclearizing the Korean peninsula, which is also very important. They didn't lay out any specifics about that. So there's a lot of questions about how that's going to proceed.
Both said they will work to make sure what was agreed upon Friday will be achieved. The announcements followed a day of images that would have been unimaginable this time last year as tensions flew high over North Korean nuclear and missile tests. Skeptics view Kim's move as a duplicitous attempt to buy time, while others argue any real peace deal requires talking to the North Koreans. Many of the thorniest issues, however, can't be solved by the two Koreas alone, leaving their leaders to focus on inter-Korean relations or trying to set the stage for Kim's expected summit with US President Donald Trump.
The U.S. is a linchpin in any kind of nuclear or peace deal, and Washington has made denuclearization a precondition for any kind of agreement.
Moon also said he's agreed to visit Pyongyang, the North Korean capital, this autumn.
Three Palestinian protesters shot dead by Israeli troops along the Gaza border on Friday, just hours after the United Nations human rights chief criticized Israel for using excessive force against demonstrators. Thousands of Gaza residents have been staging protests at the border fence since March 30th. So far, Israeli troops have killed 41 Palestinians and wounded more than 5,000 others since the protests began. Gaza medical officials said that apart from the 3 deaths, more than 600 others were wounded in Friday's clashes, some critically. The Israeli military said some Gazans had tried to breach the border into Israel and that troops, quote, had operated in accordance with the rules of engagement. The protests have revived a long-standing demand for the right of return of Palestinian refugees to towns their families fled from or were driven out of when the State of Israel was created 70 years ago. The demonstrations also come at a time of growing frustration for Palestinians as chances for an independent Palestinian state look slim.
Protesters marched through the streets of Guadalajara, Mexico, shouting, "Where are the disappeared?" and holding up signs demanding justice. The demonstrations erupted in Mexico after officials earlier this week said that the bodies of 3 missing film students were dissolved in acid by cartel members who confused them for members of a rival gang. Javier Salomón Aceves, Jesus Daniel Diaz, and Marco Francisco Avalos, who had been missing since March, were kidnapped by at least 6 cartel members after their car broke down. But protesters say this is part of a larger epidemic plaguing Mexico.
The case of our 3 classmates isn't the only one. Our state, Jalisco, is second in the number of disappearances and third for missing young people. So more focus has to be put on the issue, and nobody has done anything. And this could happen to any of us.
So far, 2 people have been arrested in the investigation, while an anonymous source told Reuters that the investigators are analyzing more human remains found where the students' bodies were dissolved. Prosecutors said gunmen from the Jalisco New Generation cartel were responsible, a gang that, according to the U.S., has become the most powerful in Mexico.
A war of words over trade between the U.S. and China may have quieted down for now, but Washington is still looking for ways to level the playing field. Sources tell Reuters the Trump White House is mulling the idea of taking a deeper look at informal corporate partnerships, particularly when it comes to artificial intelligence. Reuters correspondent Gui Qing.
The general concern that the U.S. government has is Chinese investment or research in AI could eventually be used for Chinese military purposes that could hurt America's interests in the long run.
Any crackdown could have big implications for companies like NVIDIA, a global leader in AI technology, which is already deeply entrenched in China and gets 20% of its revenues there. And it's not alone. Major American tech companies like Advanced Micro Devices, Qualcomm, and IBM are in similar situations.
What the government is now considering is using the International Emergency Powers Act, which will allow the U.S. government to basically declare a state of emergency and to review or stop any investments that they think may undermine America's interests when it comes to investment.
The White House declined to comment, but tech industry insiders warn any forced breakups could backfire, leaving U.S. tech companies with few friends in the world's second biggest market.
When Syrian refugee Yusra Mardini took part in the Rio Olympics in 2016, it was hard to believe that nearly a year earlier, the teenager almost drowned at sea while escaping the war. Now her extraordinary story will be told in a Hollywood movie and memoir.
We were all on the boat, and I've been looking at the kid with us on the boat, and I was the salt in my eyes, in my nose, in my throat, and I was really thirsty also and hungry, and I still had to make some jokes and to laugh at his face so he won't feel it, because I was more afraid about the kid than me.
Mardini had been a keen swimmer from a young age, but her dream of becoming a professional athlete came to a grinding halt when war broke out in Syria in 2011. She and her sister Sarah left their Damascus home 4 years later and headed to Turkey, where they boarded a dinghy at night and attempted the crossing to Greece. The journey to Europe was made by more than 1 million refugees that year, and Mardini said during her crossing the boat started to sink. With no other choice, the sisters, along with 2 other refugees, jumped into the sea and dragged the small vessel for more than 3 hours to the Greek island of Lesbos.
Me and my sister thought about the same thing, which is that we are swimmers, and it would have been a shame if we die there,
Mardini, now 20, has her eyes set on the Tokyo 2020 Games and hopes her memoir Butterfly, named after her strongest stroke, will inspire others.
You're up to date. Check back later as stories develop.
From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for the weekend of April 28th and 29th, 2018. Silver is trading at $16.53 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,324 per ounce. Zencash is trading at $41, and the average price of Bitcoin is $9,065. Antiwar.com reports President Trump said Friday that he is encouraged by the summit between North and South Korea. This added to his administration expressing high hopes about Trump's own upcoming meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The Friday meeting between Kim and South Korean President Moon Jae-in ended with the agreement to move towards denuclearization and a peace deal to end the Korean War. The Korean War started in 1950 and was never officially ended. While Trump has been cautious about the meeting with Kim, he has also praised the North Korean leader's recent diplomatic efforts. On Friday, Trump assured that he would not repeat the mistakes of past administrations in dealing with North Korea. Despite media reporting aimed at discouraging diplomacy with North Korea, President Trump has continued to advance the process towards talks. It is expected that the talks will take place in late May or early June. According to Trump, 5 locations are under consideration, as are 3 or 4 possible dates. That the two Koreas had their summit so successfully will only bolster the expectations for Trump to make a big deal in his own summit. This is likely to mean further pushback from media opponents of the talks who seek to portray them as doomed to failure. Zencash is an end-to-end encrypted system with zero-knowledge technology over which communications, data, or value can be securely transmitted and stored. With over 7,500 secure nodes, Zencash has one of the most distributed node systems of any cryptocurrency. Zencash is a platform for cryptocurrency and communications built by voluntarists for voluntarists, with the ideas of voluntary interaction being written into the white paper no less than half a dozen times. Learn more at zencash.com. That's zencash.com. UPI reports a passenger on board the Southwest Airlines flight that had an engine failure that killed one person last week sued the Dallas-based airline Friday for neglect, according to court documents. Lilia Chavez accused Southwest Airlines and CFM International, the maker of the engines installed on the Boeing 737, of negligence and willful, wanton, and outrageous conduct. The suit by Chavez is the first to be filed over Flight 1380, which made an emergency landing on April 17th in Philadelphia en route from New York City to Dallas. Investigators said a fan blade in one of the engines broke away from metal fatigue and debris struck the side of the plane, breaking one of the windows. One passenger was partially sucked out of the broken window, but other passengers were able to pull her back inside the aircraft. The woman, Jennifer Riordan, died from her injuries. Chavez said in her lawsuit she was sitting 3 seats behind the broken window and witnessed the horror as the woman was pulled out of the plane. She said the blast of air from the broken window caused debris to strike her and obstructed her breathing. For over 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. And as a Bitcoin-preferred business, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. Reuters reports adult film star Stormy Daniels' lawsuit against U.S. President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, will be paused for 90 days. The federal judge in the case ordered on Friday, saying that Cohen's constitutional rights could be endangered if the lawsuit proceeds while he is under criminal investigation. District Judge James Otero wrote in the order, the court finds that there is a large potential factual overlap between the civil and criminal proceedings that would heavily implicate Mr. Cohen's Fifth Amendment rights, referring to the Constitution's protection against self-incrimination. Cohen has admitted to paying $130,000 to Stormy Daniels to secure her silence about having sex with Donald Trump, which he denies. Cohen said the payment was legal and Daniels has sued to end her non-disclosure agreement. Michael Avenatti, a lawyer for Stormy Daniels, promptly pledged to fight the stay, writing on Twitter he would file an immediate appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in California, which could ultimately lead to the Supreme Court weighing in. Otero wrote, whether or not an indictment is forthcoming, and the court thinks it is likely based on these facts alone, these unique circumstances counsel in favor of a stay. Daniels has argued that the lawsuit should proceed, with Cohen invoking the Fifth Amendment only for specific questions that might lead to self-incrimination. But Otero wrote that approach could lead Cohen to not answering any questions, rendering a deposition useless. This has been FPP Radio News. Online at fppradio.com.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Game 7. This is Maria Marino. Coming up tonight at 8 Eastern, Bucks face the Celtics. Winner advances to round 2 of the NBA playoffs. Although the matchup is in Boston and the home team has yet to lose in this series, Milwaukee's Giannis Antetokounmpo isn't letting the pressure get to him.
There's no pressure. For me, there's no pressure. I'm blessed being in this situation that I am. I've never been in the Game 7 before. I'm going to have fun with it, enjoy the experience, go out there, leave everything on the line, play hard, get myself ready for war, get my teammates ready for war. There's no pressure.
Later at 10 Eastern, it's the first game of the second round as Pelicans tip off against the Warriors. Pels swept the Trailblazers and Dubs topped the Spurs 4-1 in the first round. Golden State's Steph Curry, coming off a knee injury, participated in a 5-on-5 scrimmage yesterday. He's questionable for tonight's contest. Over to Stanley Cup playoffs, Game 1 of the second round in the East between the Bruins and Lightning in Tampa Bay. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern. Then tonight at 8 on NBC TV and here on NBC Sports Radio, it's Game 2 of Sharks Golden Knights in Vegas. Golden Knights lead the series 1-0. On the Diamond, matinee baseball, Reds visit the Twins a little after 2 p.m. Eastern. It's also White Sox at Royals and Brewers at Cubs. 303 Automotive is a premium line of protectants and cleaners designed to keep your car looking new and lasting longer. Available at most auto part retailers or visit 303radio.com.
From CBC News, The World This Hour. Hello, I'm Kenny Sharp. Breaking news this hour. Officials in Alberta are worried about rising river levels. Flash flood warnings have been put in place for areas of Woodlands County. There are fears that the Athabasca River is rising too quickly. If you need more information, you're asked to contact Woodlands County at 780-778-8400, or if in emergency, 911 is the best number to call. Again, concerns in Alberta this hour about rising flood levels, river levels along the Athabasca River. Meantime, rain and rapidly melting snow in New Brunswick are flooding homes in that province as well as closing roads this weekend. In Fredericton, rising levels of the St. John River have already put parts of the city underwater. The CBC's Matthew Bingley is there.
The fog is so thick, it's hard to see the St. John River, but every now and then it breaks and you can see just how fast it's moving. A large tree stump just went sweeping down extremely fast. It's this reason why the emergency officials are warning people to stay away from riverbanks to avoid what they call disaster tourism. And yet we're still seeing people show up to take photos by flooded out streets. Now, those are the ones that are closed, and there are dozens of sections of roads and highways throughout the province which are closed. Now, this is all as the river continues to rise at 8.2 meters right now. We're very close to the 8.3 meter period where they are predicting it will get to tomorrow, which is the same level as the 2008 flood. Matthew Bingley, CBC News, Fredericton.
And we have more breaking news out of New Brunswick this hour. Nicholas Butcher has been found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Kristen Johnston. Johnson was found in her Purcell's Cove area home back in March 2016. She had suffered and died from multiple knife wounds. The guilty verdict comes after a 3-week trial. In international news, in Nicaragua, protests are escalating this weekend as thousands call for the resignation of President Daniel Ortega. The backlash began when Ortega's government tried to reform social security and pension systems in the Central American country, but have grown into a wave of dissent against Ortega's 11-year rule. At least 60 people have been killed in clashes, including a journalist who was shot to death while reporting live. Ortega is being compared to longtime Nicaraguan dictator Anastasio Somoza. In Yemen, funerals are taking place for Houthi leaders and rebels this weekend killed in a Saudi-led coalition airstrike on the capital. It's being seen as an escalation in a war there, pushing Yemen to the brink. Rebecca Collard reports.
Caskets draped in the Yemeni flag drove through the streets of the capital, Sana'a, this morning.
Uniformed men marched beside the trucks carrying the bodies. Officials in Saudi Arabia said they killed 2 top Houthi leaders in an airstrike early this morning, part of a Saudi-led campaign in the country to defeat the Houthi movement, which controls the Yemeni capital. Since 2015, the war in Yemen has killed more than 10,000 people and plunged the country into the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Yemen's hospitals are filled. 8 million people are on the brink of famine. 75% of the population is in need of humanitarian aid. This is a man-made crisis, and despite the dire situation for so many in Yemen, there seems to be no letting up of the war that has destroyed the country. Rebecca Collard, CBC News, Beirut.
And just a recap of our top story this hour, flash flood alerts have been issued for parts of Alberta along the Athabasca River in Woodlands County, specifically Flats Road. There are reports of large volumes of water moving overland. If you need to get in contact with Woodlands County officials, it's 780-778-8400, or if in an emergency situation, officials suggesting you call 911. That is your world this hour. For CBC News, I'm Kenny Sharp. As always, thanks for listening.